let's see, 10 years, it's always difficult to predict technology with precision, especially over a 10-year time frame when it is changing so much. I mean, there's obviously the transition to sustainable energy with solar, wind, batteries, and electric vehicles. And that is, if you look at the percentage growth of that, that is a very high percentage growth. Although because of the massive industrial base of the current sort of fossil fuel economy, even if all, for example, if electric cars were 100% of production immediately, it would take 20 years to replace the fleet. So this is still something that is quite gradual. It's measured in at least a few, 30, 40 years type of time frame. On a more sort of near-term time frame, I think artificial intelligence is something we need to be quite concerned about and really be attentive to the safety of AI. You mentioned ChatGPT earlier. I played a significant role in the creation of OpenAI. Essentially, at the time, I was concerned that Google was not paying enough attention to AI safety, and so I with a number of other people, created OpenAI. And although initially it was created as an open source nonprofit, and now it is closed source and for profit. I don't have any stake in OpenAI anymore, nor am I on the board, nor do I control it in any way. But the ChatGPT, I think, has illustrated to people just how advanced AI has become. Because the AI has been advanced for a while, it just didn't have a user interface that was accessible to most people. So what really ChatGPT has done is just put an accessible user interface on AI technology that has been present for a few years. And there are much more advanced versions of that are coming out. So I think we need to really be, I think we need to regulate AI safety, frankly, because if you think of any technology which is potentially a risk to to people, like if it's aircraft or cars or medicine, we have regulatory bodies that oversee the public safety of cars and planes and medicine, and I think we should have a similar sort of regulatory oversight for artificial intelligence, because it is, I think, actually a bigger risk to society than cars or planes or medicine. And this may slow down AI a little bit, but I think that might also be a good thing. The challenge here is that government regulatory authorities tend to be set up in reaction to something bad that happened. So if you look at, say, aircraft or cars, the cars were unregulated at the beginning, aircraft were unregulated, but they had lots of airplane crashes, and in some cases manufacturers that were cutting corners, and a lot of people were dying. So the public was not happy about that, and so they established a regulatory authority to improve safety. And now commercial airliners are extremely safe. In fact, they're safer than if you were to drive somewhere. The safety per mile of a commercial airliner is better than a car. And cars are also extremely safe compared to where they used to be. But if you look at, say, the introduction of seatbelts, the auto industry fought the introduction of seatbelts as a safety measure for, I think, 10 or 15 years, before finally the regulators made them put seatbelts in cars, and that greatly improved the safety of cars. And that airbags were another big improvement in safety. So my concern is that with AI, if there's something bad that if something goes wrong, the reaction might be too slow from a regulatory standpoint. So I'd say, like, if I'd say, like, what are the biggest risks to the future of civilization? It's AI, but AI is a double. It's both positive and negative. It has great promise, great capability, but it also, with that comes great danger. I mean, you look at, say, nuclear. Just discovery of sort of nuclear physics. You had nuclear power generation, but also nuclear bombs. So anyway, I think we should be quite concerned about it, and we should have some regulation of what is it, if fundamentally a risk to the public. With respect to education, I think in general, some things that we could do to make it more compelling would be to explain to children why we are teaching a particular subject. The human mind has evolved to really forget anything that it deems unimportant. So, in fact, human memory is really quite bad relative to, say, the memory of your phone. Your phone can remember the entire contents of an encyclopedia down to the last letter and pixel. But human memory is terrible by comparison. So the mind is constantly trying to forget things, actually. So if you explain the why a subject is being taught, that will then establish relevance, and it's much more likely to result in motivation for kids. And then also, if you teach knowledge, especially in the sciences, as solutions to a problem, it's much more effective. So, like, let's say you're trying to understand an internal combustion engine. Well, it's actually better to sort of take that apart and then say, okay, well, what tools do we need to use to take it apart? We need a wrench and screwdriver and various other things to take it apart. Well, then you understand that the reason for the tools. And so, like, for mathematics and are like tools in physics and engineering. But if you teach to the problem and then you understand, then you establish the relevance of the tools, then it's actually much easier to remember mathematics and physics because they help explain how the world works, as opposed to teaching them without explaining why, and simply teaching them. It's like, instead of teaching to the problem, currently people teach the tool. It would be like having a course on screwdrivers or a course on wrenches, but not understanding why you have a course you're learning about screwdrivers and wrenches. I think this is really quite a fundamental principle that should be applied in education. And I think sometimes we do teach classes that children do not find useful, and where the answer to the why is actually not going to be a very good answer. Most people, I think, do not find advanced mathematics useful and are unlikely to find it useful in their life. Or the elements that they do find useful could be taught very quickly as general principles. I also think that critical thinking is something that should be taught to children at a relatively young age, as effectively like a mental firewall, to really think about when somebody tells you something, is it cogent? Is it true? Or what is the probability that it is true? And so that you can be taught to reject things that are untrue or more likely to be untrue, and favor things that are more likely to be true. Critical thinking, I think, is very helpful for people to learn.